thank you, Carla. I appreciate your introduction there, and certainly I'm very happy to be here with the rest of the co-panelists for the PSL live stream this evening. Certainly very aptly titled, "The Pandemic of Racism is certainly right in front of our face here, the epidemic of racism," whatever it's called. Nevertheless, I think that it's very clear that the rot at the core of the system here in the United States, that is the racist oppression of Black people, that's been built on since, well, not 1619 actually, since the 1500s, in what we call the United States now, when the first Africans came here. It's been essential to the rise of capitalism, it's been essential to the maintenance of capitalism, and certainly as capitalism has entered its sort of last 30 or 40 years and tried to globalize and become ever more imperialistic and ever more brutal, there has also been the intense warehousing of the Black population as we've become more and more superfluous to the neoliberal capitalist plans to dominate the world. And we've had quite a bit of occasion to see this in the past few weeks. I mean, certainly, we'll speak about many of these incidents here tonight, but whether it be the issue of the garbage workers, the hoppers in New Orleans, who were at least briefly in their strike replaced by prison labor, which certainly is reminiscent of the long history in Louisiana and in the South of the use of prison labor, not just as a strike breaker, but also to open up some of the most dangerous, most brutal industries, whether it be mining, the turpentine camps, the lumber industry. We could go on and on and on, but that history of the use of Black prisoners as, really the shock troops of capitalism, the most expendable on the front lines for, the worst employers, quite frankly, continuing today. Whether it be the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, who in the county where he was killed in Georgia during the heyday of lynching between the Civil War and World War II, there were 3 other incidents of Black people whose bodies were riddled with bullets and brutally mutilated and lynched, and the echoes of that history coming down through us. Certainly the lynch mob type situations we've seen in a couple different cities, the multiple police killings that we've seen in Indianapolis in recent days, and also just the overall issue of underlying conditions, so-called underlying conditions as they exist in the United States. That have disproportionately, or that have led to Black communities in many cities, especially in the Midwest and other places in the South, be disproportionately hit in terms of the death rate of COVID-19. And, it's treated as some sort of random thing that just people happen to have underlying conditions. But that benign way of discussing it really does absolutely nothing at all to illuminate the fact that, so-called underlying conditions are the results of predatory industries that have addicted people to all sorts of terrible substances, that have done whatever they possibly can to replace fresh and healthy food with the worst possible but cheapest terrible foods, that have created an outright health crisis. I mean, we call many places food deserts, and it's a food desert because there's a lack of healthy food, not because they're not things that you can eat, but the things that are available to you are so destructive to your system. The high rates of asthma from the unbelievable inequalities that exist inside of how power is generated in this country, inside of how waste is dumped in this country, inside of how environmental regulations that seem to be the laxest in these many places like, say, Cancer Alley in Louisiana. So ultimately, so many of these things that are considered underlying conditions are not even about the individual people in and of themselves, but the circumstances of structural racism in which they live. And I think that as we continue here tonight on our live stream, we will see that this epidemic of racism is, certainly taking on its own reality here in the time of a pandemic, in the time of COVID-19, but that this is really just another exposure of the just disgusting rot at the center of this capitalist system in the United States, which is racism. So I'll just leave it there. Certainly looking forward to hearing what everyone else has to say here this evening, and certainly very happy that you were able to join us here. So much appreciation, of course, to Carla for introducing me again. And again, just really happy to be here and happy to be a part of it.